Good evening. My name is Anthony Manousis, and I'm co-founder of Making Housing and Community Happen. I want to welcome you tonight to our April Housing Justice Forum, focusing on the ABCs of ADUs. ADUs are also known as accessory dwelling units, or granny flats. We at MHCH believe that they can be an important element in addressing our affordable housing crisis. They can help homeowners stay in their homes and also help lower income people like students, family members, and the elderly have an affordable place to stay. Tonight you will hear from experts on how to build ADUs affordably and how to advocate for policies that will make it easier to build ADUs. We will begin tonight's program with a personal story by Bert Newton, a member of our MHCH team. Bert is a Mennonite pastor who moved into a low-income neighborhood in Pasadena to be a good neighbor. In order to be able to afford a home, he lives in an ADU behind the main house. In this opening segment, he'll explain how living in an ADU helps him to live affordably in Pasadena, where the median home price is now $1 million. Yes, $1 million. That's over $250,000 more than the median home price in LA County. Bert will tell us how co-owning a home made it possible for him to be a homeowner, and how his back house provides him and his wife with a place of their own in which to live and work. So take it away, Bert. We're eager to hear from you.
My wife and I bought our house with a third person who has since found a partner. So we own half the property and they own half the property. We do it through a legal construct called tenants in common, which exists in California to help people buy property together. We did this partly because we value the ideal of shared property, but also because there was no way we could afford to buy a house on our own in Pasadena. Buying together with another party was the only way to do it. The property that we bought has an ADU in the back. Both the main house and the ADU were built in the 1920s. So as you saw in that poll, for many decades, ADUs were built throughout Pasadena and are part of the character of the city. The virtual halt in building of ADUs in 2003 was the anomaly, which thankfully has been reversed due in part, at least, or in large part, to the work of the MHCH ADU subcommittee. Now, to make a long story short, my wife and I ended up living in the back house ADU and the other couple lives in the main house. Now, that may not sound like a fair split, except for two things. There are 3 bedrooms in the main house, 1 in the back. So the agreement is that one of the bedrooms in the main house is rented out to a tenant at a low rate. We believe in affordable housing. And the money that from that rental goes into a house fund for repairs, maintenance, and upgrades. The other bedroom in the main house is used as a guest room for guests of either couple. We get to use it, they get to use it. But the way it's been working out for the last 2 years is that the couple that lives in the main house decided they needed 2 bedrooms. So they are paying the rent amount for the rental bedroom. And that amount goes into our house account for repairs and upgrades and maintenance. The guest room for the last 2 years has been used to house a refugee who is in the asylum process, seeking refuge in the US from violence in her own country. So the ADU has made it possible for 2 couples to enter into home ownership and start building equity, and also for a person seeking refuge in our country who is not allowed to work to have a place to live free of charge. So 5 of us are being housed in a way that we would not be housed otherwise because we have an ADU. So back to you, Anthony.
Thank you, Bert, for that very interesting summary of your experiences with ADUs. And now let me do a screen share and share a little bit about what our committees are doing. And I'll try to keep it real quick. So we have a lot to cover, but I want to give time for Jill and the rest of us to speak as well. So we have, let's see, how do I do this? Okay. So we have 7 different committees. The first one, we're going to do in alphabetical order. We'll hear more about the accessory dwelling unit team during the course of this Housing Justice Forum, but basically what's happening now with the team is that they're seeking to fast track or streamline the process of getting permitted to do ADUs so that it meets state requirements of 60 days, not almost a year. And this would include things like having a one-stop permitting process. Also, the ADU team is trying to eliminate fees for affordable ADUs to get the city to allow ADUs to be built over garages and carports of multifamily properties to preserve parking, and then to allow both attached and detached ADUs, as is the case in most other cities. And then we're celebrating. There was the city council just approved funding for the ADU pilot program that would help homeowners to have affordable ADUs on their property, either building them or having garage conversions made legal and brought up to code.
And they want an award.
And then they won an award, a national award. It was one of the top most innovative programs for affordable housing in the country. And then the team that I chair, the Affordable and Supportive Housing Advocates, or ASHA, we're very excited that the city will be doing its housing element. It's every 8 years. They have to do a plan on how to do housing for the city, and the regional housing needs assessment said that the city needs to have 6,000 units of affordable housing in the next 8 years. So we're pushing for that through a coalition we work with called the Affordable Housing Coalition. And then we're working on tiny shelters for the unhoused. And there's going to be a public event next month led by one of our very energetic team members, Sonia Burnt. We just had a prayer vigil to promote affordable housing on congregational land. 60 people showed up, including State Senator Anthony Portantino and our City Council member, John Kennedy, who strongly supports affordable housing. And now we're also trying to encourage landlords to accept Section 8 tenants, and we have some plans on how to do that. We have a dynamite congregational land team. This group of highly skilled professionals freely advises and equips congregations that wish to have affordable housing built on their underutilized land. And they're able to do it for free because we have a $100,000 grant that was received to help.
And some other tools.
And other tools as well. We have 43 congregations interested in having affordable housing built on their property. We have 7 in Pasadena. And especially exciting is the New Life Holiness Church has moved into the process of having a development agreement to build 42 units of affordable housing in Northwest Pasadena.
52.
And they have decided that whatever money they make through the ground lease will be used to help more families pay for rent and mortgage. So they are a very committed Christian church, and they really want to serve the community with the land that God has given them and that they feel stewards of. Their goal is to help beautify this neglected part of the city without gentrifying it. We've also been doing some advocacy at the state level. We want to bring back SB 899. This would rezone all church land throughout the state so that churches would be able to build affordable housing on their property. And we, as mentioned, we have support from John Kennedy and Senator Anthony Portantino, who came to our prayer vigil this weekend. We're working on an overlay zone, which is basically rezoning all the church land in the city, not just here in Pasadena, where it's gotten on the agenda, and then it was sort of pushed to other committees, and we want to get it back on this council agenda again, but also Sierra Madre, Fullerton, Yorba Linda, and Gardena have all met with Jill and other members of the congregational land team in order to find out how they could have allowed churches to build affordable housing in their cities. We also have a community land trust team with Connie Tampkin and Margaret Lee, and they've been doing a lot of important sort of educational work. They went to a community land trust conference, and they also went to a gathering of the Grounded Solutions, and they also wrote the City Board of Council Board of LA County Board of Supervisors to support SB 1079, and this would provide funds to purchase homes being sold at auction to go to a CLT rather than to other bidders. This would ensure that those homes would be permanently affordable. And they need people for their advisory and nonprofit board. So if you're interested, please contact Connie at makinghousinghappen.org. Our congregational liaison is led by Bert Newton, who's been very active. We have 20 congregations as part of our network. Bert spoke at the community church in Holliston, at classes at the Sousa Pacific. He spoke at the Pasadena Mennonite Church and at the Pasadena Jewish Temple. And we have 2 churches with food pantries who've been signing letters to support the overlay zone. 15 Mennonites came to the prayer vigil this weekend. And Arita Kroll of Pasadena Presbyterian Church made a video on how to submit comment to City Council. And then we have the North Fair Oaks Empowerment, and we have a wonderful new intern named Etta Jordan, and she's here with us tonight. And she's been helping to create a survey that will go out to 1,000 neighbors to determine how they would like to see this area of the city improved. And presently we're working with professors at Cal Poly Pomona to find a student willing to create an image of what this if our improvements are adopted, and some of the goals are listed below. So we also have a safe parking committee that is trying to house the people who are living in their vehicles. The church would be the host. They provide a light breakfast and volunteers as well as their parking lot. And then Foothill Unity Center, which has homeless services, would provide case management, referrals, security, porta potty. The goal of safe parking is to help people find permanent housing. We want people to be housed, not in their vehicles, but in a supportive apartment. There are presently 1,241 people living in 675 vehicles in the San Gabriel Valley. And we're about to launch our first safe parking pilot once we finalize some insurance details. If you know someone living in their vehicle in Pasadena, please contact us. We have 5 spaces available for safe parking. So that's the report of our committees. And now we can hear from our executive, from our executive director and my wife right here.
So just pull it up, don't share.
Oh, don't do share, okay,
Great.
that's right.
Okay.
All right, so Jill, why don't you take it away?
Okay, I want to thank everyone so much who's here tonight. I saw some names of folks that you're from Colorado, so thank you. It's pretty fun to see who's joined us. I want to open my ED report tonight by just mentioning how I've become so much more aware of some of my own brokenness and my imperfections, and how God uses me and really all of us despite ourselves, and sometimes because of it. Working in teams is not always easy, but teams make us better people and help to rub off some of our rough edges. And so it really forces us to listen to each other and to realize, as we really hear each other and are open to hear each other's hearts, that we really are much better together. No wonder Jesus worked in teams. He had quite a motley crew with the 12 disciples and a few women. And the Bible says that even Jesus learned, which is just blows my mind to think that the Son of God had to learn, and grow in his humanity. He had team members like Peter, who spoke out of turn, and then team members like Judas, who turned on him. And I know all too often that there's been times I've spoken out of turn and not taken time to use some of my active listening skills. But I know that we have hundreds of volunteers that have been part of us in the last 20 years. And I think about how incredibly gracious we've all been to extend our forgiveness and love and graciousness to each other. And And I feel like as an organization, we're growing in grace, we're growing in love, we're growing in what it really means to love. And so I just wanted to mention that tonight. It's been on my heart, but I also want to set the stage for the evening's focus on ADUs by um, providing just a little bit of history. So it is one of our oldest teams. It started in 2003, and as Anthony mentioned, and it started when AB 1866 was passed at the state level. So this particular state policy was wonderful. It actually allowed for anyone in the state to have an ADU. But then the not so wonderful part of it was that it allowed cities to craft their own local ordinances. Um, and so in so doing, cities across the state started crafting ordinances, and many of them were doing everything they could to try to stop ADUs, and Pasadena was no different. There was about 20 pastors. We all showed up at the city hall, and we had an excellent proposal. We'd worked very hard vetting it with many people in the community, but it was shot down when one city council member stood up, walked to the next city council member and whispered in their ear, and then went to the next city council member until he spoke with every one of them. And by this time, it was after midnight, and somehow they all agreed to propose a 15,000 square foot property requirement before an ADU could be built. So that's why in our poll, you could see that between 2003 and 2017, only one was legally built. With that huge property size on top of a bunch of other onerous restrictions, it was nearly impossible to try to build one. You had to have a 2-car garage. It couldn't be seen from the street. It had to be 500 feet from the closest one. So only God knows how many struggling homeowners figured out how to still create unpermitted ADUs just to make ends meet and to help their families have a place to live. So one thing we did to try to change that 15,000 square foot and those other egregious things I just mentioned is that we hired an intern from Fuller Seminary who was also a realtor. In fact, you know what? I'm not sure we actually hired him. I think he did it pretty much volunteer. But Chase Andre was amazing. He researched every property in the city of Pasadena, and he was able to determine that there was 740 legal ADUs in the city of Pasadena that had been built since its inception, that are still in existence today. So, so we realized that ADUs play a very significant role in Pasadena's historical character. We mapped every one of these ADUs and we did a comparative analysis. So with the help of Bill Burns and others, we wanted to see the impact of these 740 ADUs on neighborhoods. There were complaints that they would cause traffic, create crime, and many other things. And so some things I wouldn't even want to repeat here. I heard horrible things that would happen if we allowed ADUs. So we found one street in the southern part of the city with 90 ADUs, and next to it, a street that had none. We found similar areas to do a case study in northwest part of the city, as well as one in the northeast part of the city. We studied crime statistics, parking, traffic, property values. With this repeated analysis in 3 parts of the city, we found consistently there was just really no impact on the city and on those neighborhoods. And so we brought that powerful research to the city council. And even with that, we were making no headway. So that's when we decided we would go to the state. And we worked with several state lawmakers and HCD, and that's when we were able to finally make headway. Because of our efforts and others around the state struggling, we together were able to pass policies that now make it possible for anyone in the state to have an ADU, no matter your property size. You can have 2, not just one. You can have one internal within the footprint of your home and then one external. So but you'll be hearing more about this evening. I want to introduce Lynn Tang initially to start off the workshop this evening, but I also, before I introduce him, I want to mention how grateful I am for each of our teams and our team leaders. Phil Burns, who leads our Congregational Land Committee, Connie Millsap Hampkin, who leads our CLT efforts, Tom Petersmeyer with his powerful safe parking team, and Anthony Manousis, my dear husband, who leads our affordable supportive housing advocates, Pastor John Stewart and Elder Dr. Gilbert Walton, together with Etta Jordan, our wonderful intern, helping with our North Fair Oaks Empowerment Team, and of course, Anne Marie, leader of our ADU committee, together with Lynn. So both of them will be leading this workshop together with other members in our workshop, but let me just introduce Lynn right now to kick off the workshop this evening. He grew up in Pasadena, and he now lives in the house that he grew up in with his wife and 3 teenage boys. He's been part of the ADU committee for the last 3 years, and he believes that providing affordable housing is a key part of retaining Pasadena's diversity. He pastors Missio Community Church and also leads the church planting initiative at Fuller Seminary. He is additionally the convener of the Racial Justice Coalition of Greater Pasadena. So with no further ado, I just want to thank you again. And Lynn, please take us forward there.
Great, thanks, Jill, for that context and background. Again, I'm Len Tang, and let's see, do we, am I seen here? Spotlighted. So I am introducing the ABCs of ADUs workshop. And this is a joint presentation from the whole ADU committee. I'm so glad and privileged that there are 7 or 8 really great members who bring a diverse perspective and great wisdom and expertise to ADUs. We are really passionate about building ADUs because we think they are a key part. There's no silver bullet, but we feel like they're a really key part of solving the affordable housing issues here in Pasadena and beyond. And there are many reasons why ADUs are a great decentralized tool, or as Jill puts it, for creating gentle infill. And so we want to really equip homeowners. We really see our mission is to equip owners to be able to finance, design, permit, build, and rent ADUs in the community. In particular, we hope that this is going to be a source of affordable ADUs and even to be able to house Section 8 renters. So we feel like there's a lot of benefits to ADUs of enabling families to stay in the homes that they currently are in because of the additional income, and to house others in a way that doesn't change the fundamental character of neighborhoods. So we're very excited about them. And we hope that this is the first of several different ADU forums that we host for the public, that we in equipping homeowners, we really want to give them all the tools to be able to do that. Now, just out of curiosity, can folks see me here? Committee members with very specific expertise are going to be sharing with you a little bit about some of the practical aspects of the different phases of building an ADU. And so we're going to begin. The first person is Boris. We'll be sharing a little bit about some of the basics of ADUs, but Boris grew up in New York City and moved to Pasadena just a couple years ago. He's an urban planner by background, and he likes to work at the intersection of transportation and land use planning. So he's got a great background for it. He joined the ADU committee last year, and he is also a consultant with Maximal Space, which is an ADU education and design company. So he will be sharing some slides and input, but I want to welcome Boris and thank him for being with us tonight.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for that great introduction, Len. I will share my screen and kick off this part of the workshop with a presentation about what you need to know about ADUs to avoid expensive mistakes and plan your project. Can everyone see my screen? Great. So this ADU on the cover page is, it was built actually for the mother of the founder of Maximal Space, Caitlin. It is a garage conversion. And on this next slide, I can show you what it used to look like on the left. And as many of you are looking to learn, what is the process for going from either an empty space in your backyard or a garage to a finished product. So I'll have some tips on what goes into designing and building an ADU and what you need to know. And tip number one is to understand the regulations. Of course, there are lots of regulations that evolved over the years. And the biggest and most recent changes that many of you are familiar with happened with laws, state laws that went into effect on January 1st, 2020. And some of the biggest state law changes are that homeowners associations cannot prohibit ADUs anymore. This used to cover significant amounts of homes. There's no minimum lot size, which was, of course, a big problem here in Pasadena. You are allowed to have only 4 feet side and rear setbacks to fit an ADU on your lot. And you cannot be required to reside in either the ADU or the primary home. Of course, you can choose to, and most people will still live on the property that they own. But if you choose to rent, for example, both the ADU and the primary home, you're allowed to do that as long as your ADU is permitted by 2025. That law expires then, and of course, we're not sure if it will be extended. Also new in 2020 is multifamily properties can have ADUs for the first time. Development impact fees for units under 750 square feet are waived. Again, another aspect that was already brought up here, Pasadena charged as much as $20,000 when you wanted to add even a small unit. And now you cannot have development impact fees at all for units under 750 square feet. And for larger units, they must be charged proportional to the primary home. And what that means is if you were going to build your primary home from scratch, what would those fees be? And then you take a proportion of square footage to your ADU, and that's how much you would pay. It would not be out of some arbitrary number or something like that. Also, the California Department of Housing and Community Development has more control and enforcement capability to get cities to comply with the new regulations, where previously, for example, HCD could not refer violations to the state attorney general, and now they can do that. So this slide is a little bit complicated, but partially this is intentional because this again goes to highlight the complexity of ADU regulations. So I'll just highlight a couple of the numbers here. There were actually three bills passed by the state legislature. They were combined into the set of regulations, and that's part of the reason you see so many different numbers. So like I mentioned before, under 750 square feet in area is how you avoid development impact fees. An ADU that is 800 square feet in the area, up to 800 square feet, and with 16 feet in height, has to be allowed regardless of all other development requirements, such as lot coverage or floor area ratio. So even if you don't fit some other requirement, as long as your ADU is under 800 square feet, there is basically a separate state bill that was passed just for this, to allow this size ADU. Now, 850 square feet is a minimum maximum, which means a city cannot restrict square footage for an ADU to be less than 850 square feet. They can allow you to build smaller, of course, but they must allow this size if you want to build a larger ADU. And that's for a 1-bedroom, and they must allow at least 1,000 square feet for a 2-bedroom. And we do have a PDF handout about this if you wanted to kind of look into it in more detail. Tip number 2, start financing early. And of course, most of us do not just have cash in the bank we can use to build an ADU. And in today's housing market and with today's loan regulations, it takes quite a while to actually get the financing for an ADU. And the common options most people have are a home equity line of credit. A line of credit you get, which you use almost like a credit card that's backed by the equity in your home. And you can spend that money and on construction as you go along. You don't have to take it out all at once. So you only pay interest while you have that money outstanding. And then you can pay it back or do a refinance. The second option is a cash out refinance, which is you get a larger mortgage, again, using the equity in your home, and you get all that extra cash all at once, so you can build your ADU. But you essentially get a larger mortgage that you then pay back over whatever is the number of years. Another option is a renovation loan. And even though technically these loans are for renovations, which is why they're called renovation loans, you can build an ADU and, for example, remodel your primary home or whatever it is. And what they do is they appraise the value of your property as if you already built the ADU. So they do a future value appraisal, and often that allows you to get a loan that's larger than your cash out refinance, for example, because it's for a larger amount. And then the last option is get money from family members or something like that. Tip number 3, understand the cost. So what does make construction, an ADU construction, fairly expensive? What goes into it? So I often get asked, what is the cost per square foot to build an ADU? And that's actually not a great estimate, because the first 400 square feet or so are the most expensive. This is because plumbing, kitchens, bathrooms tend to be the most complicated and the most expensive parts of construction. So any ADU will have a kitchen and a bathroom. So as you build larger, the cost per square foot goes down. it does not really cost too much to make a larger bedroom or living room, but your plumbing and electric costs are more or less fixed. And because ADUs tend to be smaller units, they often cost more than you kind of would normally expect. Other things that go into cost are design. So are you using any unusual architectural elements? Anything that like a conventional contractor wouldn't have a lot of experience with? Site access. Can you bring large construction equipment onto the property? Slope. Hillside lots are always more difficult. You're moving large amounts of earth. There's special regulations, things like that. Utilities. Are you providing both gas and electric? Do you want separate meters? Are you adding solar panels? Things like that will impact the cost. The level of finish. Are you going with higher end appliances, higher end finishes, and so on? That will all be a factor. Now, how can you bring those costs down? There's a number of ways. And generally, value engineering is the term used to when you talk about optimizing the cost of an ADU. The right designer who has experience designing in small spaces can value engineer that unit for you to increase the effectiveness of the layout and make a small unit feel larger. Have one plumbing wall, sometimes called the wet wall, is very common to bring costs down. For example, if the kitchen and the bathroom share a wall, you can have all your plumbing on that wall, and that's cheaper to build. You can avoid bringing in gas and have the unit all electric. And it's actually now required in a number of municipalities. Pasadena is not one of them, I believe, but sometimes electric is required for environmental and safety reasons. And you can sub-meter then, as opposed to install actual official meters to separately meter your ADU's utilities. And some more cost-saving opportunities. So again, if you stay under 750 square feet and optimize the space, you can avoid development impact fees. Understand the city's ADU application process. That will save time and therefore money often. And what's becoming more popular is pre-approved plans, something Pasadena does not currently offer, but hopefully will. And that, again, helps in two ways. It helps streamline the process further from both the city's end and the designer's end. And it, the city either pays for the plans up front and provides them at low cost to the homeowner, or if those plans are available through designers, they also have somewhat of an economies of scale, and they can make those plans available at a slightly lower cost. And you can look for various grant programs, special incentives, and again, work with experienced designers and general contractors who know about ADUs, and always get multiple contractor bids. If you're interested in the return on investment, the first question to ask is, what value does the unit bring to you? Does it keep you from spending money for an older relative to house them in an assisted living facility? Is it rental income? Can you live in the ADU and rent out the main house? And as a final example, to kind of show that there's no one size fits all, and you should look at your situation. And if you're looking at renting out your ADU, look at the rents in your area. There are two examples I have here for costs and projected rent to kind of give people an idea of what their return on investment would be. In many cases, building an ADU is worth it if you're going to rent it out, because the rent is very likely to cover the interest and principal on any loan you would take to build it. All right, and I believe I have maybe 1 minute for questions. Thank you.
Boris, I think we'll also take questions at the end of the presentations.
All right, sounds great.
Great. Thank you, Boris. Just very helpful and informative. And maybe it might be possible to get those slides later on, so we can just confirm that. The next person from our committee to share is Andrew Slocum. He's a newer addition to our committee, but he and along with Gina have been wonderful additions, and particularly in making us more aware of the opportunities for ADUs on multifamily properties as well. But Andrew is the co-founder of Casitas, which is a full-service ADU development and consulting firm, and they work again with single-family, multifamily, and affordable housing sectors all at the same time. So he very much wants to seek projects that consider the social, environmental impacts of development along the way. His background is in finance, and he volunteers with the Skid Row Housing Trust in LA and also the San Gabriel Valley Habitat for Humanity. He's a member of several national housing and building organizations as well. So we're really grateful for the wisdom and conviction that Andrew has brought, and I'll turn it over to you now, Andrew.
Yes, hi everyone. As Len had just said, me and our lovely moderator, Gina Ozork, are Casitas. But then also on top of that, as thank you, Anthony, for celebrating us, we're also the consultants for the City of Pasadena's ADU program. And it's just a pilot program, so we have 5 right now that have been approved, but we're most definitely going to scale larger, as it's a very successful program. Again, it won one of the top 10 awards for affordability. We may have a spotlight on Pasadena for a large scale firm that does spotlights for these types of things. So definitely look at Pasadena being well known for its ADU program. I think the housing department has done a great thing. I'd like to share a little bit more on multifamily accessory dwelling units and what that looks like. As a couple of these things may be repetitive, but I'll just go through it. I wanted to highlight what the terms that we use in multifamily accessory dwelling units. Multifamily, in the term of an accessory dwelling unit, is 2 units or more that are attached. So a lot of times we think of a multifamily might be a large building, but in all of these intents, a duplex is multifamily. And just recently, Senate Bill 9 just passed that got rid of single family zoning. So any parcel in California can now be a duplex. So you're going to see a lot more of the multifamily side being created in California. Accessory dwelling units are innovative, affordable, effective options to add housing in California. And for our multifamily, we deal with 2 different main types. We have an attached unit, which is within the envelope or attached to the building. So that could be a garage, that could be an unutilized storage space, it could be a boiler room. And then we have detached, and the detached is usually 6 feet to 10 feet away from the existing structure. And in multifamily, we can do 2 detached units. Our expedited term means that our permitting process is supposed to be much quicker than it is. The state law does allow, say, 60 days. Now that doesn't really happen because we're really seeing a lot more of these accessory dwelling units. So what used to be a year is now down to 6 months, but we're really getting towards the 60-day time frame that we would like to see these done. As Boris talked about a lot, impact fees. Impact fees at one point were extremely high for Pasadena. 20,000 is a number that keeps being put out. I've heard 30,000 for impact fees in Pasadena. and now they're very relative. I just got impact fees for 2 units that I'll show you later, and those fees were $1,200 per unit versus $20,000 to $30,000 that came in today. Let's see, Assembly Bill 68 is what made this possible in the multifamily side. It allows, it got voted on October 9th, 2019, and it took in effect January 1st. Depending on how these bills get voted on, they either will take place right away or in the next coming year. It allows for a minimum of 1 attached accessory dwelling unit or up to 25%. And the 25% rule is pretty interesting. Anything from a duplex to 7 units, you can just do 1 attached. But it starts to get exciting after 8. Then you can have 2 attached. Let's just say we had a 100-unit building, 25%. That means that we could take unutilized space that just could be sitting there in the basement or wherever it is and add 25 more units to the building. Now, there's a little stipulation in there, and in the state law, it doesn't require a municipality to do the attached and detached. A lot of places, most places in California allow the combination of both, but they don't have to. They can allow you, the municipality, to just have one or the other, meaning you can elect to do the attached or the detached. Pasadena is one of those places that is elected to allow just the one or the other. And by the other, that's the 2 detached units that can be built in the excess land, which I'll show you a little bit later what that looks like. And Assembly Bill 68, especially on the multifamily, is anywhere in the state of California, not just Pasadena, not just San Francisco, not LA, anywhere in the state of California. For what we look for the attached, it's anything that could be an attached garage, soft story parking, like that old tuck under parking that needs to be retrofitted, storage areas, laundry rooms, boiler rooms, passageways, attics, basements, detached garage, or just unused space that's on the side of the parcel that's just growing weeds. Now, this is a lot of the images I'm going to show you are buildings that are in Pasadena that we're doing this on. This, for instance, is a building in Los Robles. And what you'll see here, I highlighted what we're going to take a look at is what we look for. Here's our soft story tuck under. This can be converted. This was an unutilized storage space that can be converted. Same thing here. And then at the bottom, you see this. This was a giant excess on the back of the parcel that no one parked at. It was overparked and didn't get used. So you can add the 2 units there. Here's another building. What we look at from up here, you have an empty room that was just used for storage. And most of the time when we say storage, there's nothing there whatsoever. So this room can be converted. This right here, we're converting this to have parking underneath. Actually, this one is not, this is City of LA. So I'll get back to that a little bit later, but this is going to be having parking underneath and 2 units above it. So this space was just there for 5 cars. Now it'll be able to have 5 cars and 2 750 square foot units in it. The ability to rent to 2 rooms on those. So it'd be 2 families. Here is, these garages are funny enough. Here we look at these garages, and the reason why I say it's funny is because you look at them and you think, who would ever be able to park there? We opened up 2 of them. One was a Mini and the other was a smart car. The only vehicles that could go in there was a Mini and a smart car, and that's exactly what was in there. And you see this a lot because the garages are so small, you can't even park your cars in there anyway. And so this will be converted into what we call an attached ADU, or 2 of them, because the building has so many units on it. Here's another building on Catalina. You see the 5 garages there, and this is a computer rendering because this is what we submitted today. But those garages, they look really good in the picture, but there is no cars in there. There's no way to get cars in there. And so that will be converted into, this is what the building will look like when it's done. And that'll be 2 buildings, 2 units right next to each other. And if you look here, I'll show you a little bit of what the floor plans look like for something like this. You'll have your bedroom, your entryway, and your bathroom. Now, these are about 400 square feet each. So they're not extremely large, But if you look at what we have in Pasadena, there are no 400 square foot units for rent here. It's just not even there. There are no 1 bedrooms of this size. It's all luxury units in brand new buildings. And because this is blending in with existing buildings, it's affordable by nature because these units just don't even exist anywhere. Here is excess land that we have on the side of this parcel. This picture is a picture from Google Earth, and there is no longer a garden there. It is just dead grass that's just been sitting there. Here is a photo of what we're going to put there. This is 2 units right next to each other that'll be built into this XX space. So now that people can come and live in here. Here's another photo, and this little blur right here, that's the existing building. So it's just off to the side. That was not being used for anything, and now we have 2 more rentals that we're creating. Again, another floor plan. Now these are a little bit larger, 750 square feet each, so we're able to do 2 bedrooms there. So you have your entryway from the side, you have your kitchen, you have your bathroom, and then you have 2 bedrooms in the rear of them. As Boris said, there is a lot of detail into the value engineering. As you see, our bathroom is on the same wall, our kitchen is on the same wall, and that really helps with our construction costs so that we can put everything all on one wall. It doesn't get spoken about a lot, but one of the biggest costs we find is our utility runs. The utilities for the sewer and the electric they cannot connect with the building. They have to be trenched in on their own. And that's a lot of manpower depending on where you're running to. This is just someone by hand digging a hole that could be a 100-foot run depending on where it is in the back. And that's where a lot of the costs are. We typically see 1/3 of the cost could be from the utility runs. This is a building in San Francisco, and this really shows what this state law can do. And I've been working on projects of something similar of this in Pasadena. And what this is it's hard to tell from the picture, but that yellow box is excess parking. Now this building went 4 stories underground, and so this parking was never utilized. The developer took the new state law and turned that into residential units on the outside. So they took the parking and filled it in, and now on the outside, it's now used as residential units. Here's another example. This was a parking garage that was underutilized. There was enough parking in the building. There was more subterranean parking. So they took the outskirts of the parking garage and created rental units so that we can get more in there. And another thing I want to highlight is in California, our land costs so much. So by taking these units and creating them before you have to buy the land, you're able to do it so much more affordably. Typically, we see apartment units like this created for $130,000 to $140,000, which may sound like a lot, but you can't buy anything for that price. I looked in LA, there is a trailer park for sale where the trailer park units are $250,000 a unit. So it's not even possible to buy a trailer park, let alone brand new construction, nice units in our area. For any other questions anyone has, you can send me an email. And again, I'd want to express that a duplex is a consideration of multifamily here. And you're going to see that a duplex can be built anywhere these days. Andrew Slocum, and then my partner, our lovely moderator, Gina Wasoric. And we're happy to answer any questions. We also, our business plan is not really multifamily, but if you have a single family questions, we're happy to help, especially since we're doing it for the city of Pasadena.
Thank you so much, Andrew. That was such an exciting presentation. And thank you everyone who has joined our Zoom party this evening. I want to especially thank MHCH for giving us the space to do this and giving us this night to speak to all of you about something we're so excited about. And I wanted to make sure, those of you who don't know me, my name is Anne Marie Molina. I am the co-chair of the ADU committee. And I wanted to share a little bit just about myself. I was formerly homeless as a teenager, and now I have the privilege of living in Pasadena with my family. I have 5 children, and I'm currently at Cal State Los Angeles, and I volunteer with MHCH. And we're not just crazy people that are really, really fascinated with little tiny houses. We are fascinated with the people that live inside of the little tiny houses. We want to ensure that all of our neighbors are happily housed no matter what stage of life they're in. Whether you're a student or a young family, or you're looking to age in place, whatever your story is, we feel that everyone deserves to have a comfortable and a safe place to stay and to rest. It's part of our mission as making housing and community happen, and we feel that ADUs are a piece of that puzzle. I am very privileged to have team members that I consider really great friends. And one of those friends I get to introduce today. She is an advocate for those who are vulnerable in our community. She advocates for women and children and for those that have been displaced by providing low-cost housing. She is the executive director of Beacon Housing. She's also a very patient and kind partner when she's been on our committee, and we hope she'll continue to join us. I'd like to introduce my friend and the director of Beacon Housing, Pauline.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, perfect. I'm having a little bit of difficulties, so please bear with me for 1 second. Here we go. I'm going to share my slide. Okay, now I can see myself. I hope everyone is doing well. Thank you, Making Housing Community Happen, for having me here tonight, and to Anne-Marie for that lovely introduction. So as she mentioned, I am the executive director of Beacon Housing. We are a faith-based 501c3 nonprofit housing developer with properties that are both, we have both transitional housing property that serves women who are survivors of domestic violence, and also affordable apartment buildings with some in the city of Pasadena. So our mission is to provide low-cost housing accommodations, but also to support innovative housing solutions for the affordable housing crisis. So today I wanted to, you've heard a lot tonight already about what some of the considerations for thinking about ADUs, and especially for both single families and multifamilies, and some of the legislative developments that have allowed that to happen. I want to mention a little bit today about why ADUs and affordable housing, because that's our mission, to promote affordable housing. And I know that that's a key concern for many of you here tonight. Obviously, I think most of you, all of you know that there is a drastic shortage in affordable housing supply in the state of California, but also particularly in Los Angeles County. About over 500,000 new affordable units are needed to meet the needs of people who are earning less than the region's average income. But in 2020, there were 555,000 households who were severely rent burdened. And that's defined as people who spend more than 50% of their income on rent, on housing. That's actually much more than what HUD recommends as the best practice for how much of the income should be allocated on rent. The best practice is set at 30%. So in LA County, that's not really possible, as I'm sure all of you know, given our housing market. There is also a significant need for workforce housing, and that's really targeting people who are employed and working and earning between 80 to 120% of the area median income. And the reason why is that a lot of them still can't afford the housing in the city of Pasadena because of the high rental market that we have. And that means that a lot of workers who might work in Pasadena, for example, have to live elsewhere and then have to have longer commutes. This doesn't only have impact on the quality of life for the workers, but also on things like the environment because of greenhouse emissions and so on. Because of the severity of the issue and the multifaceted nature of the issue, I think it's really important that we think about ADUs as really a tool in a toolkit, because there cannot be one single solution, right? We have to look at solutions from multiple perspectives. As an affordable housing developer, I can share that, you know, for the cost of ADUs is definitely lower per door. It is also simpler to build, and especially given, as Andrew and Boris has mentioned, the new legislation that has been passed. The permissive legislative environment is really something that we see and hope would contribute to greater, not just greater interest, but greater ability of people to be able to build ADUs. Obviously, you know, the program that has already been mentioned, Pasadena, the Pasadena Second Unit Pilot Program that Andrew and Gina are involved in. There are a lot of these programs at city and state level that are trying to incentivize the building of ADUs and helping homeowners to navigate the process. And so there is some assistance there that I think is helpful in terms of being or encouraging people to use or to approach ADUs as a solution for the affordable housing crisis. Jill has mentioned this before at the beginning of the presentation, but another solution is the gentle infill. A lot of concerns that people might have about new affordable housing developments is about density and about how much, you know, that it would add too much density to the neighborhood, but ADUs provide a way to add gentle density. So that, as Jill mentioned at the beginning on the research that they have done, that it doesn't change, it doesn't have negative impact on the neighborhood in terms of traffic or parking. And finally, and I think this is a very important point that Andrew mentioned briefly during his presentation, but I want to emphasize that there is a need for a variety of housing sizes on the market. In Pasadena, there are not that many studio units, for example, or smaller size units. And the ones that exist do exist in the more luxury developments. And as a result, there is the need for the variety of housing sizes, the diversity of housing sizes will actually add to the affordability of the units naturally, but also that it's important for, I think, for tenants and renters to be able to access a wide variety of housing sizes on the market, because that obviously comes in at different price points. I also want to mention that there's a clear importance, obviously, for all of you being here, and especially those of you who indicated that you were interested in becoming or on building ADUs on your property, that all these new developments and incentive programs really, I think, empowers you to be a part of the affordable housing solution, hopefully. That it allows the facilitation of individual action, that if people want to provide housing on their own, that if they're a homeowner, that can happen. But also that within that context, there are groups that are facing really greater vulnerability to homelessness within our community. For example, seniors. Seniors are one of the fastest growing groups of homeless groups in the city of Pasadena. Also, like I mentioned before, the need for workforce housing. So I think that especially impacts a lot of younger workers who can't afford market rate rent. So I think these are all reasons why ADUs are important for affordable housing. I also want to touch really quickly on some of the benefits for renting to an affordable tenant, because for some of you who may be considering ADUs as a revenue source, as an income source, especially for Section 8, if you're renting to Section 8, there's stable income stream. And even if the tenant loses their job or is facing temporary unemployment, the rent will continue to be paid by the public housing authority. So that is actually lowering your risk as a landlord. There's also longevity. So tenants tend to stay for many years in all of our housing developments, in our affordable housing developments. Our tenants tend to stay for many years, and that provides stability. It lowers turnover costs. It allows you to build community, which I think is really important within, especially for ADUs, because they would be sharing your property. If you're renting to an affordable tenant, so someone who's already receiving assistance like Section 8, they've already gone through some screening process like income certification. So that is, saving you some time and resources, and you can still maintain final decision over your tenants. So the tenants that you can choose to live in the building. And again, the mission aspect, so you get to provide housing and a chance at stability to households in need. So with that, I'm going to turn it back to Anne Marie and for questions, but I'm happy to take, if you have any questions, please feel free to email me on the email info@beaconhousing.org. And again, thank you to MHCH for the opportunity to speak with you all tonight.
Thank you so much, Paula, and we really appreciate that. I know that we have a lot of advocates on the Zoom tonight, and if you want to get in touch with me or let me know if you would like to join our advocacy journey, please feel free to email me. I'm going to put my email in the chat, and I'd love to hear any positive or negative, or let's say challenging experiences you've had with ADUs. I will go ahead and do that now. I'm going to turn it over to Gina, who will be taking questions and answers. I did see a few in the chat, so thank you so much for joining tonight. Gina?
Sure. Hi, guys. I'm very excited to be here tonight. So I did get some Q&A in the chat, and then did get a couple private questions that I would like to address. First, we're going to start with one about unpermitted ADUs. So actually, I'm going to have Max take the best single family question and Andrew take the multifamily. So if you do have an unpermitted ADU on your property, what's the process to legalize it? So Max, could you take that when it comes to single family, either if you've purchased a purchase with already that was an unpermitted ADU, or you added an unpermitted ADU at one point and you'd like to get it on title and legalize it? Sorry, Boris, I'm so sorry. Boris, could you take that question? And I'll have Andrew take the same thing on multifamily side after.
Yes, I'm sorry. Can you repeat the question, please?
Yes. Can you please explain the process of getting your permitting your unpermitted ADU on a single family lot?
Yes. So some cities, like the city of LA, does have a special program for that. But in general, I could say that imagine that the unpermitted unit is not there and you have to build it to code. So what steps would be involved? So in general, you need to go through the normal permitting process and do your inspections. But because you already have a structure completed, you may be able to skip some inspections or do them kind of in an abbreviated manner. So for example, you may have a plumbing inspection, but they will just ask you to open up the walls in a couple of places to show the plumbing and the various tie-ins and connections. They will not do kind of a top to bottom look. So it is a little bit intrusive in the sense that you already have, your drywall up, but they're going to ask to look under it. But they do have to confirm that everything is up to code. That is the main concern. So if you can basically go through those steps with the city and I think mostly staff are understanding and will help you go through the process. It might take a while, and there may be some things where it's really hard to bring something up to code. It's almost like starting from scratch. But if you have a newer unit that maybe was already built up to code, just not approved as such, then you'll have an easier time getting it permitted. But you basically have to go through a version of the normal process for permitting and construction.
Great. Thank you. And do you want anything to add, Andrew, about on the multifamily side?
Yeah, sure. Boris had mentioned, but there's another term for you. It's called the UDU, and that is the unpermitted dwelling unit. And that's when we took space that was already livable space and made into another unit. So let's just say we divided a 2-bedroom in half and turned that into 2 1-bedrooms. In the intent of the ADU law, that it doesn't work, because the intent of the ADU law was to take what was non-livable spaces, such as a storage room or a garage or a boiler room, and turn that into livable space. So some cities do have an unpermitted dwelling unit process. Most of them don't. City of LA is a place that's known for that. East LA, they're everywhere. So they really came up with this process. County of LA, they don't matter. They don't care if it was unpermitted or not, as long as it was attached to the space. But what you want to look for is if you were to say turn your garage into a living, but not using the ADU process like you did it before, you want to make sure that the garage was permitted as a garage first. And the reason why is our setback requirements only matter if it was permitted at one point. So if it was never permitted and you were on the property line, then we're going to have to take 4 feet out of that. But if it was permitted as a garage and you did it, then what we need to do is bring it up to code. And that's our energy code and our livable code. But if it was permitted as a garage, there's a way to do that. And that's our ADU way.
Great. And I just want to add here, talking about the UDU, if you do want to take space that was a livable space that you converted, you can actually do it via providing an affordable unit. So you should look that up. That provides an affordable units UDU. I can put a link in the chat. And while we're on this topic, I don't think everyone is well versed here on setbacks. So Andrew, could you just quickly explain what you mean when you say setbacks? And
of course. So one of the great things that the ADU law did is change the setbacks to a 4-foot requirement. Historically, it was very large. It could be 10 feet. So if your lot was not wide enough or you didn't have enough space, you would never be able to do this. And the ADU law brought it down to a 4-foot setback. But what it also did is said that if you had a legalized structure, like a legalized garage, there is no setback requirements, because if it was already there and already legalized, we can take that existing space. So let's just say your garage was on the property line. We don't have to worry about setbacks if it's legalized. We can just take that garage and convert it into an ADU exactly where it was.
Thank you for that. Payla, I have a question for you. How'd you become a Section 8 landlord? And also, what if you just want to become a landlord, but just want to rent affordably? Are there a particular property manager you contact, or how do you list your unit or advertise that unit as such?
Sure. So the process to becoming a Section 8 landlord is not that different from being a traditional landlord, I guess, in the sense that once a person is approved for a Section 8 voucher, then they are required to go find a landlord who would rent them. So that's any private landlord. But once they find that landlord, once they find the unit that fits the requirements, then they would bring the process back to the public housing authority. So in Pasadena, that's the Pasadena Housing Department. And the unit would have to go through inspection and be approved for the voucher, essentially. And then once that happens, there's some regulations around, for example, like when rent can be raised and so on and so forth. So there are some regulations around that, but for the most part, the main thing is that there's an annual inspection. And that there's a limit to how much rent can be, which is based on generally speaking, the fair market rent that is published by HUD. So just to give you an idea, in right now, I believe the 1-bedroom fair market rent in LA is something around $1,600, which is still significantly lower than what it is in Pasadena, actually, for the market rent. But and then for the property management question, I think, yeah, I myself, I'm not aware of a particular property manager that in the city of Pasadena that only works on affordable buildings. But I think that for each landlord, it's really a question of whether or not you believe that the property management services are needed, right? Because obviously there's a cost to that. And if you have fewer units, maybe that is not a cost that you want to bear, and that it's work that you can do yourself. So.
Yeah, and I'm assuming that if you do want to track that a tenant and that you want to make it an affordable tenant, you would just state something like so on your own advertisement for the actual.
Oh yes, there are also. Sorry, I forgot that part of the question. There are also websites that, for example, the city of Pasadena has a website that is a resource website for renting an affordable unit. And actually, it's not only for affordable units, but they do require, my understanding is that they require all the affordable units that are registered to them. They ask that they advertise any vacancy onto that website. I believe it's just Pasadena Housing Search, but it's run in conjunction with PasadenaHousingSearch.com, but it's run in conjunction with LA County.
Great. Thank you. I have 2 last questions if we have time. I do have a question about working with historical societies. So Jolene said, have you been working with historical societies like Glendale Historical Society to bring them along into the cause? I'm going to actually ask Jill or Anne-Marie, Len, if you guys know the question to that. I know the ADU subcommittee, we haven't touched on that. So have you had any relationship with them when it comes to the historical nature of housing?
I'll just mention that when you're looking at the Mills Act or any landmark home, they do have a different set of regulations of how and if you can even do ADUs. And so that is not something we've yet broached on to any extent. But it is possible for historical homes to have ADUs. It's just a little harder. I know that has to do with our laws had to do with a certain type of door and preserving those. That may seem kind of crazy, but that's a great question. And then there's also I just wanted to mention that we're working on some really good policies to help make it less expensive to build ADUs, to streamline the process and so forth. And if some of you are interested in joining our committee, we would love to have you join us and on our efforts. And even just helping when we go to advocate if you don't have time to join a committee. So yeah, we have a poll that's going to take place, I think, in a minute. Was there another quick last question, or?
There was a question about SB 9, but I think Andrew answered it in the chat,
Okay.
right?
I believe there were 2 more questions, but I just wanted to mention that our plan is to hold additional meetings that are focused on certain topics. So in our poll, we're going to be asking if you're interested in more specific concerns regarding the process, so we can know how to plan our future meetings accordingly. So I think that there was a message about a split meter and about energy codes. So, if that's something, that technical question is something that you're interested in, then that's definitely a focus that we would move on to our next meeting. We want to be mindful of everyone's time. And, we're just, again, so grateful. So I'm going to see if Andrew can take one of those questions.
Sure. Yeah. So our energy code is Title 24. and that just came into place. And that what it is it's where our new buildings are considered net zero, and so that it's high efficiency with, say, our water heater or with our air conditioning units, and also the allowable for solar panels as well. And so when we do new units, we have calculations called Title 24 calculations, and that does our insulation values, our roof values, and those are the materials we use and the code that we go after to make sure that our construction is energy efficient as well. We know California has its own power concerns, and this is a way that our new construction identifies that. The second is livable code. And the main thing that we have to do, worry about, or our concern is with an accessory dwelling unit, is that we have a kitchen and a bathroom. An accessory structure does not have a kitchen or a kitchenette. So in order to have an ADU, you need to have a kitchen and you need to have a bathroom. And that's what the difference is between an accessory structure and an ADU.
Thanks, Andrew.
Yeah.
And Ambry, I don't know, was one question about Airbnb, if we wanted to address that before I turned it back to you and Jill to wrap things up. There's a question about, are there concerns of the ADUs becoming short-term rentals, Airbnb, and not thus really rental housing?
I'll touch on that real quick. When we do an ADU, we have to sign a covenant that it will not be used for a rental for less than 28 days or to multiple parties within 28 days. So it's recorded against the ADU. And there's very few places in California. I think I've heard of one city that may allow that, and I'm still not even confirmed that, so I'm not gonna put it out there. But when we do an ADU, we do confirm it will not be used for short-term rentals, because the idea is to get rid of housing supply, not have these high turnover, high value Airbnbs in our backyard in our neighborhoods. It's not really what it was made for. Yeah.
Great
questions.
I'm going to turn it back to Anne-Marie and Anthony and Jill to close us out.
Thank you again. I think Jill and Anthony are going to go ahead and post the last poll for the evening. Our email is also available if you would like to go ahead and send any additional questions, or if you would like to sign up and join our kooky crew and try to make some more changes in the city for the positive. And I would like to say that if anyone, we've talked to a lot of people who are conservationists, who want to protect the city, and we want to work with everyone. We want to make sure that that this is a community effort. So anyone who would like to join, please send your information. We'd love to have you.
So before Anthony starts the poll, I just want to again thank all the presenters. You guys were awesome, and everyone who came, and mention that that there will be a series of workshops. This was essentially the first, but tonight we're essentially launching other workshops around the topics you're interested in. And so if you're interested in some of these topics, please just finish the poll. That will be our agenda for the future forums or future workshops we'll be having. If it's not listed in the poll, then put it in chat so we can know what topics you're interested in learning about in regard to either affordable ADUs, ADUs on multifamily, ADUs in backyards. So please start the poll.
Okay, I think we've got 72%, 24 people, probably good enough, okay? Because we need to move on. And I'll share the results. Can you all see it? Can you all see the results?
Yes.
Yes.
Good.
Can we go back to see?
Okay. Okay, well, we'll keep track of all of this and it'll be used to help us plan future events.
Workshops.
Yeah, thank you.
And I think if there's folks that have additional questions, that at this point we're ending our evening. We'd like to end with a moment of silence. It's a Quaker style. We just honor everyone's faith tradition, whatever it is. And we'll take one moment of silent. And then if people want to stick around and ask questions about not just ADUs or you can ask about any part of the efforts we're involved in. So if you need to get off, feel free to do that. But let's just take one moment and take that moment of silence.